Hi, welcome back to yet another segment of Veterans Did You Know? And today we're talking about mental health issues and with me, Derik Van Baale, who is a readjustment therapist with the VA, not the VA, but the Veterans Center. And so we kind of discussed that earlier on if you want to go back and look at some of these earlier segments. But I think, Derik, we talk a lot about the Afghan vet and Iraqi vet only because they're the newest we see coming in the door. But I know as a Vietnam vet myself and the Vietnam vets I've talked with who've come to your group and have gotten, for the first time in their life, gotten some kind of direction, some kind of stuff that was never there. And I think as you pointed out, the Vietnam vet in California who's the one said, you know, we're not going to let this happen to somebody else. And we're not going to let this happen in should we have a future war. You know, we never catch on. We seem to keep every 20 years, 15 years, get ourselves in a mess someplace and get a whole new crop of that. But how does the Vietnam vet work in with the support group, the younger kids? I talked about that a little earlier. I said these kids are young enough to be my children.
Right.
And how does that dynamics work?
It is actually a very unique dynamic. I run a few groups at the Vet Center, and we have a mix of Iraqi, Afghan, Vietnam veterans for the most part, and the Iraqi and Afghan veterans actually gain a lot of wisdom sitting and listening to the Vietnam veterans who have been dealing with the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder longer than most of these Iraqi and Afghan veterans have been alive without treatment, dealing with it on their own. And that's one of the issues I'd like to talk just a couple seconds about with the Vietnam veterans. Myself as an Iraqi veteran, I trained with the group I went over with. We fought together, we came home together. As you Vietnam veterans know, that's not the case for you guys, for most of you guys and gals. You went over as individuals, you did your year, you came home, and you were kind of left to your own devices. And for many of the folks that I work with for the past 40 plus years, they have felt like they are the only ones that think the way they think and feel the way they feel. It's not until they come in, engage in the counseling process, engage in the group process, which is also another service that we provide, that they feel like, wow, I'm not the only one that feels this way, and there's a group of 10, 12 other guys and gals that feel the same way I do. And for the Vietnam veterans that we're finding, that is a very powerful healing tool for them, knowing that they're not alone and that they share a common experience and the thoughts and feelings with the other members of the group.
Well, and you're right, because I know I talked to so many vets, and they said the same thing. I just felt like it was me. I didn't know. And then, you take that list of usually three, well, you get the list, there's, 15 or 20 different things, the post-traumatic stress, and you start reading them down, and they say, well, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's you, and tens of thousands of other veterans can click that same list off, and here's what it is, here's what you got, here's what's going on with you. And you think, well, I'm not crazy then. I'm not just some nutcase who couldn't hold it together. And when you meet with our vets, you see they have all the trinkets and all the stuff and all the badges and everything on there. Some kind of reminder, some kind of a thing. Is this what I accomplished, or is this what's dragging me down? I have to say both ways. Because I'm trying to get some kind of an answer. I'm trying to get something. I know that what this is where it started, because my life was okay, I guess, until that. And then since then, it's been this. And until you talk to another vet, and you're right, especially the group. When you sit in a group, and a lot of times vets will come in, they'll sit there, and they won't say a word for 2-3 sessions. They just sit back and listen to somebody else. And all of a sudden, one of the guys says, it's my turn to, let me say, and then the rest of the guys will sit back and let this individual, you might run the whole session. Absolutely. Just getting it out. Just that is so therapeutic, but it's so heart-wrenching for the rest of it. They all know, but everybody else knows it. Dude, I know what you're doing is that it's that peeling that onion back until you finally get to that core and say, this is it. This is what it was right here, until you can do that and have the atmosphere that you feel, because you feel pretty vulnerable. Anybody who's gone through anything mental health, you always feel vulnerable talking to somebody else. And again, are you going to understand? Are you not going to understand? And am I weak because I cry here when I talk about this stuff or whatever else? And I think it's just coming in. It's just saying, okay, enough's enough, and feeling confident enough in yourself to say, hey, there's a guy sitting here talking to me, and maybe I should give it a try. Mm-hmm. You got everything to win, not a thing to lose. You're not going to be any worse off for sitting down. You don't have to go back. but it might just open your eyes up and saying there's some healing. You know, it took you 30 or 40 years of covering this up, and it sometimes take a little while to clean it up and stuff, though. So.
Absolutely, and one thing that we find, and I'm surprised that the civilians, not to pick on the civilians, but I'm going to for just a second. When folks go to combat, you know, you get the idea that they're fighting for God, country, and mom's apple pie. Well, when the bullets start flying in anger and the artillery comes in and the bombs start exploding, they're fighting for this guy right here.
Yeah.
This guy right here.
In your own idea.
And when they come back, they can't connect with anybody else the way they connected with their buddies over in combat. So they spend a majority of their time with the Vietnam veterans and the Iraqi and Afghan veterans as well, Desert Storm, trying to find those relationships. And it's a different kind of relationship than you have with your wife, that you have with your buddies that you had before, because you had to take your life, place it in his hands. He had to take his life and place it in my hands. And that's a special bond and a special trust that some civilians they just can't understand. You just can't. And when they come in, they talk to us, we get them into some groups. They finally, for the first time, find other people who they share that common experience with, and it lets them let their guard down, talk about their thoughts and feelings, which goes against the grain of folks who have been in combat in the military, and the healing can begin.
And I think that's probably the most important thing is to realize yourself. And I think any veteran who's been in counseling knew it, and they knew they needed it a long time ago. But it's just the planets weren't aligned right with family, with job, with whatever's going on in their life to say, okay, I'm going to set all this everyday stuff aside and look at the guy in the mirror, the gal in the mirror. This is the one that needs the help, and nobody else is going to do it for me. Just like you said, nobody else is going to make that happen but this guy. I'm responsible for it myself. So if I want to get better, then I have to go to the doctor and see how can I make myself better. Mm-hmm. And that's a tough thing to do. And as Derik said, a lot of these vets, we see them all the time. They come back and they'll come in and they're just a wreck, physically and mentally. And yet today, if you would put them on an airplane, they would go right back over there, right in the midst of it, and feel very comfortable because that's where the guys are. That's where my brother is. That's where my best friend is. That needs me. That I got pulled out and left him. I had to rotate back, or I got injured, he got injured, or whatever the case may be. And again, people don't understand that. I think maybe firefighters might, or police officers, that something where your life is put in somebody else's hand and somebody else is responsible for you, and that's a tremendous thing. That is just the ultimate trust level. And you can't even get that with your brothers, your natural born brothers or siblings. Yeah, you find it with somebody else, and if you lose track of that individual or along the way, or they're gone, and it's hard to build that trust back up to come to talk to somebody, especially somebody you don't know for the first time. Like, I don't want to peel all this stuff out and lay it on you, and what are you going to do with it? But it's the only way you can get better. Guarantee it's the only way you can get better. So Derik is, myself, as a director here and a vet myself, and what we put together here is just for that. Here's a place for you to come, and it's a place for you to access the care and the help and the understanding, just to sit like this and talk with another vet for as long as you want to talk with another vet, and it'll make you feel better for the fact, and maybe you'll understand a little something. And then those of you who have gone through this yourselves, you've walked through that valley, you came out the other side, you're not done. Your march isn't over. As far as I'm concerned, now your responsibility is to go back through that valley and get the other guys who are still sitting there and walk back with them. And the walk becomes easier because there's 2 of you, and there's 3 of you, or there's 4 of you, and that's what we got to do, one at a time. And that's what the group kind of does. I think they'll pick one up and they'll bring it back, but you can't quit. You got to go back and bring it forward too. So.
And that's a very good point. We don't advertise a lot, hardly at all, at the Vet Center. And how we have been able to stay in business and how we've had a success rate, user success rate, approval rate of over 95, 97% for 30 years is the fact that once a veteran comes in, gets some help, well, he knows 2 or 3 other guys that are in the same boat he's in. He brings them in, and that's how we've been able to sustain ourselves on the budget that we have over 30 years. Is the word of mouth, and the process works.
And we're talking military, you leave nobody behind. So when you're out of the military, you still got to rely back on that military training, that basic training that you have. You don't leave your buddies behind. And so I know every one of you out there are watching this know somebody, exactly the person we're talking about, and you can name them, maybe 2 or 3 of them. It's probably your opportunity to suggest to them or show them, come get a brochure, come get some information on it, and say, hey, did you know there's a place to go to that they can help you? They can probably do that for you, and kind of lead the way. But again, it's the vet.
Yep.
It's the vet's got to want to be able to say, okay, you know what, I need to get this monkey off my back. I need to get something resolved in my life because this is not going to work for me very much.
And I can give you a great illustration with just a few minutes that we have left. When I came back from Iraq, I was a mess. And I couldn't find a job. I was an officer in the Army, and I was very frustrated, very down and out. And it was a couple Vietnam vets who had went through the vet center in Des Moines, Iowa. They took one look at me and they said, hey man, you got a problem. I didn't think I had a problem, but they could see it because I was then 30 years removed. So they were able to help me, encourage me, and get me through the door so I could start healing, working on my issues, so today I can go out and help other folks. So just because you may feel like there's no hope or there's little hope, it doesn't always have to be this way. There are people out in the community, wherever you are, that are willing to help you out. You just have to have the strength and courage to ask for it. It will be given to you.
Yeah. Thanks. Well, Derik, thank you very much for. We've been waiting for a long time to get this out, and I hope we get lots and lots of hits on this. And if one veteran comes in and gets better, then we've accomplished what we want to do. So thank you for your time so much today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, everybody, and stay tuned. We'll have some more coming on down the road for you. Thanks again.